Welcome back to another edition of Sports Block from the House. I'm Coach Wes Petty, joined back again with some of our usuals. Welcome back, Bryce Herring, our senior commentator for the Sports Block, and once again, one of the founders, the originators of the Sports Block, Mr. Ryan Grover. Welcome back again, fellas.
Hey, it's great to be on again.
Happy Mother's Day.
Definitely want to wish all the moms a happy day. We couldn't do it without them, so definitely appreciative of all of them. Well, guys, we got another busy show ahead. We've got some more to continue our discussions here about the current state of high school athletics. Since our last show, it seems like things are changing and updating every day. We've hit phase one now, but, what does that really mean for sports?
Right. We definitely have some interviews coming down after we go to break that'll hopefully provide some answers. But, one of the things that I definitely heard, and Bryce, you can let me know your thoughts as well, that even all the way to the very top, people don't have a lot of answers right now and are playing it day by day. So every day is changing.
You don't really know what's happening. There's no real precedent for this. So, working every day just to try to set that precedent and kind of figure out how it can work out for our safety and for everyone out there.
Yeah.
So the first thing that seems to be opening up, obviously high school stuff is done for the year and college stuff is done for the year in terms of this current athletic calendar. But it looks like NASCAR is going to be the first thing to get back out there. What are your thoughts about that?
Definitely exciting.
Yeah,
getting something out there, something for people to watch. As an avid sports watcher myself, I'm hoping for anything. I've been watching, Korean baseball league just at 5 a.m. just to get my fix of sports. And if NASCAR is coming back, it's definitely one of the safer things to come back, in my opinion. And you can make the money and get the people back there living that work in that area. So I think it's definitely a good thing. And as long as they're safe and healthy, I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, as far as content's concerned, growing up with NASCAR myself, it'll definitely be good to have something on the TV to follow and to root behind. But the big thing that I'm disappointed in, or not disappointed, I shouldn't say, sad about, is watching NASCAR on TV is one thing. Going to a race is a completely different animal, and it's my favorite. It's one of my favorite sporting events to go to. So it'll be sad not being able to be in the stands and watch it live. So
yeah, it's definitely better for all sports being there, but there's certain sports like that it's a completely different experience in person than it is watching on television.
I want to have my shirt off in public. I want to have my shirt off in the stands.
And
that's why we don't have any fans going back.
And that's just protocol, taking your shirt off and enjoying yourself. That's protocol.
Yeah, that's how it is.
Well, guys, I'll go ahead and take us to break. When we come back, one of two awesome interviews that we have lined up for you tonight. Don't go anywhere, guys. You're listening to The Sports Block.
And welcome back to the Sports Block at Home. Tonight, we've got some guests from the North Carolina High School Athletic Association. In the bottom left here, we have James Alverson, the Assistant Commissioner for Media Relations. And in the bottom right, we have Q Tucker, the Commissioner of North Carolina High School Athletic Association. How's it going, guys?
Well, it's going great. Nice to see you guys. I've had a great day. It's Mother's Day, so I had an opportunity to see my mom and spend time with her. which is always good on this day. So,
I'll second that from Q. I've been able to hang out with my wife a little bit, enjoy our 2-year-olds. It's been a good Mother's Day for her, and that makes it a good Mother's Day for me. And was able to talk with my mom. She's down visiting her dad down in Alabama. So it's been a good day, but we miss sports. I know you guys too, and we're looking forward to talking with you guys about some sports this evening.
So to kind of get the ball rolling here, how's everything been going with the high school athletic association? What's everything been like in these crazy times?
well, I can tell you it's been unlike anything I've ever experienced, and I've been with the association for a few years, a minute, as young people say. Uh, but on March 12th is when we essentially pulled the plug on our state basketball championship. We were about 48 hours away from having our state basketball championships. And on the same day that we pulled the plug on that, we also stopped spring sports. We essentially postponed everything because we really hoped we would be able to resume play. But as you know, that never materialized, and we've been under the stay-home order. So it's been weird. As James says, we miss sports. That's our business. That's what we do. And this time of the year is when we would really be in the right in the mix of everything. And actually, if we weren't in what we are in right now, we would be having state golf tomorrow and Tuesday. Because it was scheduled to be Monday and Tuesday after Mother's Day. So it's tough. You don't really know how to act almost.
Well,
Yeah.
I'll second what Commissioner Tucker said. It's been really, really different working at the house and not being able to see my coworkers, but then also not being able to go by, swing by, Leesville Road or swing by Durham Jordan on the way home from work and seeing a baseball game or a softball game. It's been really different not having those opportunities for our young people. I know it's been disappointing for a lot of us on the staff. I know it's been disappointing for Q, but definitely for us as well. I mean, we love watching the young people succeed, especially when you get to the championship time. And we're not getting that this year, unfortunately, and it kind of leaves a little hole in our hearts a little bit. We want to see them out there on the field, and we want to see them play in the games that they love and the games that we all love. And so that makes it difficult, but we're still doing the work of the association. I'm still busy churning out videos with all the awards and all those kind of things, but it's been different not seeing your coworkers every day for sure.
Yeah, and I'm sure along with a lot of the people that you guys work with at the association, you guys are former high school athletes yourselves. What is your main focus, kind of short term and long term? I know that school is wrapped up for the year. Yeah, kind of take us through what y'all's next steps have looked like.
Well, I can tell you that we just concluded our spring board meeting. Board of directors always meets in May, and we finished that by way of Zoom. So that was, again, doing something different. But what that meeting always does for us is it sets the table for ending the school year. Essentially, any new rules or regulations that will be passed would be done during that time, which then propels us then into our state championships in the month of May, first part of June. And during all of that, we're working on getting forms revised, getting forms updated. We're working on any regulations that have come out of the spring meeting, as well as reaching back into the winter meeting last December, pulling all of those changes, pulling those in place, trying to make sure that we have everything so that when James sits down to really get into the heart of updating our handbook, we have everything we need. So those are the kinds of things that we're doing right now, especially since we no longer have sports as something we will focus on in terms of playing the championship games, getting us through the playoffs, etc. But we're just working on trying to wrap up this year. As James said, we still have tons of awards that we give out traditionally and historically during the annual meeting, as we call it. It's an award celebration, and so we're getting all of those out, getting those people recognized in as good a way as we possibly can under the circumstances. So
Yeah.
that's the short term.
Right.
Yeah, and I'll say that too. Ryan, I'm working on videos pretty much once or twice a week right now to get an award out, and we're sending out a press release for an award winner pretty much every day of the week for the last 2 weeks, and that'll continue on into the 1st of June. So really, the big difference for what we have going on right now is the fact that we don't have the championships going on. So we're not sending out release information for our championships. Our sports department is not out in the field conducting the championships or dealing with getting ready for a championship from the marketing side of things. So that's really the difference. We're still working on the handbook, as Q mentioned, and finishing up the board meeting and trying to recognize the people that have done great things for high school athletics and done great things in high school athletics across the state this year.
Yeah. Yeah, they definitely deserve that recognition, even if they weren't able to finish their season or been able to, make it all the way through, right? So
That's right.
Definitely. So going on to that, not being able to finish the season, what was the plan that you guys had for trying to finish that championship game? I know all this kind of happened right about when that was going to finish up. So what were your thoughts on that?
So we didn't know if we would be able to actually have the state championship itself, or we were planning to be able to allow several weeks, starting with having some days to practice, get back into some kind of shape, starting on May 18th, and then work our way into then being able to play some games, and then hopefully allow some conference tournaments to occur. And then we would see how that would work itself out. And as to the basketball state championship, our hope there was that if, again, the colleges, and we play our state championships in Reynolds on the campus of NC State and in the Dean E. Smith Center on the campus of UNC, if we were unable to get into those arenas, then the idea would have been to reach out to some of our larger high schools, one of the largest high school maybe here in the Raleigh area, or even in the middle of the state, which maybe would have been Greensboro, to see if there would have been the possibility to be able to contest those games in a venue such as that. So we did have some plans. We had option A, option B, and unfortunately, it just didn't materialize. And for me, that's the hardest part. I was a high school coach. I know how important senior seasons are, and to not be able to have that state championship game in basketball for those seniors. We actually had a couple of teams that were undefeated, and for them to not be able to take that all the way across the finish line, that was pretty devastating. But we did have something in mind, and again, it just didn't work out.
Yeah, as Q mentioned, we did have a lot of things in mind, guys, and I'll just add this to what Q said. I'm really proud of the coworkers that I have at the High School Athletic Association. I mainly deal with the media side of things. I didn't have a whole lot to do with the sports side of things, but the sports department worked really hard over the course of the last 2 months or so, just trying to figure out, okay, if we come back on this day, if the governor allows us to get back into schools on this day, what can we offer these kids? What kind of
yeah,
opportunities can we have? And they worked really, really hard just trying to figure out any way they could to get these kids back on the field if it would be safe to do so. And Commissioner Tucker was right in there with them as well, thinking about ways to make that happen. And I'm telling you what, the staff at the High School Athletic Association is really second to none here in North Carolina. I mean, Q says it a lot, and I'll echo what she normally says. I wouldn't trade them for any other state association staff in the country. And North Carolina is very in very good hands because the people that work here in our sports department, they care about the kids. The people at this association care about the folks that play our games, that are coaching in our games, and we wanted to do the best that we could for them. But unfortunately, like you said, the governor's order just it's out of our hands, and it's been out of our hands for a couple of months now. And we still are working hard. The sports department's still working hard on the what ifs of when we get back into school, hopefully in the fall.
Yeah,
right.
definitely no easy answer to that, but I mean, it seems like you were working very hard on that, and as a spring sports athlete, I mean, I that's such an awesome thing to hear. I mean, I was really hoping to get back out there. I'm sure you guys were hoping we were going to get back out there too, but it's great that you guys had it all prepared.
We did, and there's nothing. It's a lot like people talk about a glass half full or half empty. Half empty tends to lean towards the negative. I kept wanting to say that glass is half full, and I kept
Yeah.
thinking that we were going to have that opportunity, and so that's why we hung on as long as we could, just with that glimmer of hope. It just gave young people such as you something to continue to reach towards, something to try to continue working out, with the idea that, hey, I'm going to get back out there, finish up my senior season, and then have that graduation and move on.
Yeah.
Well, I'll leave you with one last question, and just to kind of wrap a little bit of what we've been talking about up. Both of you have mentioned quite a few avenues that you guys kind of go down to kind of make these decisions. As the governor hopefully lists restrictions as the new school year comes back around, what, as a governing body, who are you most closely working with to make sure you're doing it in a safe way and in an efficient way to get sports back up and running?
Well, fortunately, I have the opportunity to be a part of a group that will. They've asked me to join so that I can talk some from the sports end of things. What's possible, what's not possible. So we will lean heavily on our Department of Public Instruction as well as the State Board of Education. They work hand in glove with the governor's office. And so we will be leaning on them, leaning with them to try to see what can we do. Because first and foremost, we have to get the schools opened up. And the
Mm-hmm.
schools include the facilities. And so we've got to be able to get the schools opened so that we can even begin to look at what will summer workouts look like. And then as we
Yeah.
move forward and begin to project into the fall, we've got to see where we are. What phase are we going to be in 2 weeks? What phase? When will we ever get to phase 3? And what will that look like? So we will lean heavily on our State Board of Education and Public Instruction, as well as the team that the governor has assembled.
Yeah.
Yeah, Bryce and Ryan, I'll simply say this. I'm not going to add anything to what Commissioner Tucker said because she's the final word on these things. But what I will say is that being at the association for almost 5 years now and have covered it for almost a decade prior to joining the association on staff, people don't understand that the association works together with the Department of Public Instruction. They work under the guidance of the State Board of Education and with our member schools. And we're not going to do anything that they don't think is good and that they don't think they're ready to do. And so, as a state association, a lot of times what's going on behind the scenes is we're making calls to our member schools, we're making calls and talking with the State Board of Education and DPI to make sure that we're doing everything that we need to do to be ready when they say it's time to go. And so, Q, like she mentioned, she's on that committee, but our board of directors, they're principals of our member schools, they're superintendents of our member schools. They're athletic directors from our member schools, and they do a really good job of keeping us informed with what's going on the ground across the state in all 8 regions. From Murphy to Manio, it's a big state. There's a lot of different people.
That's right.
And we work with a lot of really, really good people and really talented people. And what I'll say is, having seen how the board of directors and our member schools across the state have responded to COVID-19 has made me really, really proud to work and serve those people. And I mean that because, our school personnel, when they started shutting down schools, the first thing that a lot of our member schools started doing was let's figure out how to feed these kids that don't get a meal any other way. And we're working out
Yeah.
ways to do that. And so athletics really became a secondary thing, and it should have, because there's so many more needs that our schools meet in our communities on a day-to-day basis. And it makes me really proud as a state association staff member to be serving those people at the member school level who are doing a great job to take care of the kids of this state and helping raise up the next generation of leaders to lead us through difficult times like we're in right now.
Yeah. And I did want to tag on one last question based on you guys' responses. What will fall sports look like? What do you hope it kind of looks like, and what do you kind of realistically envision as far as are we going to be playing in front of crowds? Are we going to have any special rules in place for how to navigate, full contact sports? Is there anything, any insight you guys can give on that?
Well, let me just say this. If I had a crystal ball and I could look in and I knew what it was going to look like in the fall, trust me, I would look in it and I would tell you guys, this is what we will face in the fall. But I don't have
Yeah.
that crystal ball. I will
Yeah.
tell you is I think it's going to be, I think fall sports will look different than we may even envision today. I don't know exactly what it will look like. I think it's going to be difficult to figure out football. I mean,
Hmm.
you're talking 22 guys on the field at the same time, mixing it up. You're
Mm.
Yeah.
talking throw in the officials at the same time. Then you throw in all of those people on the sidelines at the same time. That's tough. And then, of
Yeah.
course, you think about those people being in a locker room, changing, getting dressed, getting taped, and all of that. And so the
Mm.
social distancing for football is it's just hard to envision how that can happen. I'm not saying it won't happen. I'm just saying that I
Hmm.
think those are the challenges. That's a challenge in sports. I could see us playing tennis. Maybe we don't play doubles, but I could see us playing singles. I could see us playing golf. Um,
Hmm.
I'm not sure about soccer. Cross country,
Mm.
I think might would be okay once they leave the finish line, but then you got to get them
Mm.
in, and when they start crossing
Yeah.
that finish
Yeah.
line, it becomes tough. So I think these are the kinds of things that, as we get into really looking at fall sports, it's going to be hard, and there will be some hard decisions that have to be made. And I just am hopeful that, and I believe in our membership, but I'm hopeful though that we'll be able to figure it out in such a way that we can have fall sports. Uh, what it looks like, I'm just not real sure.
Yeah.
And one more thing, just before we head into the break, with the chance of football season not happening and all the money that football brings in for athletic budgets, how do you think that's going to impact the budget and impact schools around the county and around all of North Carolina?
Well, as most everybody knows, high school sports, high school athletics are very dependent on football. Let's just face it, it helps generate the funds to be able to have some of your other sports that don't necessarily bring in the same revenue. It's hard to envision how we could have sports without having football, and having spectators to come through the gates and to buy concessions and to support the booster clubs. I just don't know how that will work. I think it will challenge us in ways that we can't even envision at this moment in time. But I do think we will have to put on our thinking caps and try to figure it out. What I would hope is that if we get to a point where we can play football, and the governor or whomever says, well, you can play, but you're going to be limited in terms of the number of people who can be in the stands. Well, then maybe we've got to try to figure out how to make that work so that it can help us, financially. So I'm not sure. Again, that's one of those crystal balls that I can't see into, but I know it will challenge high school budgets tremendously if football is not in the mix.
And Commissioner Tucker did mention those booster clubs, guys, and they support so much of the things that go on, from buying the uniforms to helping with equipment. There's all kinds of questions with football about whether or not the helmets that are being reconditioned right now are going to make it back to school in time if we were to able to start football on time. There are a lot of questions about fall sports that we just don't know the answer to right now, and quite frankly, those decisions and those sports will impact on down the line, because who's going to pay the officials? How do you have the money to pay the officials in,
Mm.
different sports, whether it's golf, whether it's, if you've got officials for a tennis match, we don't do a whole lot, but, you can get those in there from time to time. Volleyball, who's going to pay for that? You got to put gas in the bus to get to these conference matches, different things like
Hmm.
that. Some schools got to pay to get on a golf course somewhere to play golf. So where does that money come from? A lot of times it comes from the booster clubs, and a lot of time their money comes from the little mom and pop shops that have been closed for the last 3 months. And so there are a lot
Yeah.
of questions that at the state association level we don't have answers for, and a lot of our member schools don't have answers for those things right now either. But it really is going to be important, and we've seen this happen in North Carolina year over year, where things happen, whether it's a hurricane, whether it's a big snowstorm up in the mountains, and people are in need. North Carolinians band together and they lock arms together and they run to help the people that are in need. And I think our folks across the state will do that again. And a lot of people rally around our member schools. High schools are integral to the communities that they're in, and our folks rally to help our high schools out. And when there's a high school that's going to be in need, our member schools are going to step up to do what they can to help them out and make sure that their kids have the opportunities to participate. And I'm hopeful that that'll be the case. I know Commissioner Tucker is too. But we're ready to get back, just like the rest
Yeah.
of you guys. But we got to do it in a safe way that makes sense.
Commissioner Tucker, you over the years have seen every facet of the field, whether it be a coach, as a player, or as a referee. If you could pick one thing to go back to today, assuming everything is back to normal, what would you lean towards first, and why is that?
Well, I might would lean towards officiating, and the reason being I wouldn't lean towards playing, just because age, age brings on a change, and
Yeah.
so your body might not want to do what your mind thinks it can do, and so I don't
Sure.
think playing would be exactly what I'd want to do, and then coaching. While I love the coaching and I loved working with the young people and all of that, again, young people today are a lot different. I think the methodologies are different, and it would take me a while to get back into the swing of things. But the rules of the game, they're still the same. How you
Yeah.
learn those rules, and then how to be able to call a game. I refereed basketball. I refereed softball. Back then, it was slow pitch softball, and then I just did some recreational volleyball. So those are some things that I think I would be able to do, because officials today are the numbers are dwindling. And I just see that might be an area where I could go and at least for a few years be able to give back to sports, which have given me so much. So would be,
Hmm.
that probably will surprise some folk, but that might be what I do.
Yeah, I agree
And
with
James, for
Commissioner
you,
Tucker.
as a former play-by-play analyst myself, I would love to see what is your favorite high school moment, and kind of walk us through how that was.
Oh man, there are so many great moments that I was able to broadcast during the 8 years I was at 99.9 The Fan, particularly at the high school level. I can remember some great battles between Millbrook and Broughton, Millbrook Leesville Road. I can remember some great games between Middle Creek and Panther Creek in football over the years. But my favorite memory probably it was my last weekend broadcasting high school football. I was doing the 2015 state football championships, and we were doing the 3A games on Friday night, and it was Rocky Mount playing South Point High School out of Belmont, and it was just a great football game. Might have been the best football game I've seen at the high school level ever. Really, no penalties to speak of. Rocky
Wow.
Mount returned the opening kickoff for a touchdown, went up 7-0, and South Point scored 21 unanswered, and Rocky Mount came back and had a 3rd down and 16 as a running team, and with about 5 minutes to go, and the
Oh,
quarterback busted down the right sideline, slipped 2 tackles, and picked up 18 yards, got him a 1st down, and got the ball rolling.
wow.
His name was Forrest Bell, and they drove it down and stuck it in the end zone with about a minute and a half to go to tie it up at 21. And South Point had a couple long plays and got almost to within field goal range, but not quite before the clock ran out. It went to overtime, and Rocky Mountain's defense stuffed them on their opening possession, and Rocky Mountain kicked a 33-yard field goal to win the football game 24-21 in overtime. It was a great football game, and I'll never forget that play from Forrest Bell on 3rd down and 16, rolling down the sideline on the right side at
Wow.
Keenan Stadium. And it was a great atmosphere. If you've never been to Keenan Stadium for one of our state championships, I'd encourage you to go there, especially if we're playing on a Friday night. The atmosphere there, and that's not to take away from any of the other venues because they're all great. But Keenan, sitting up in that press box, the field is sunken down into that little hill and in that valley, and all the sound just rises up out of it. And so I had a great seat for that one, and it was a wonderful football game that I'll remember for the rest of my life.
I mean, you always
cool.
remember the good ones, right?
You remember the great
Yeah.
ones. There's no doubt about that. So,
Bryce, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, I'm all good. It's been
Well,
great being
Bryce,
on with you guys, though.
Bryce, I'm just interested. You say you're a senior. Where are you? What are your plans?
So my plan is I'm going to go play baseball at Methodist University. And I'm going to continue there. And then I'm also going to try to start up some more sports broadcasting there. They don't really have like a set program for games. So, with that experience, I'd like to bring it there. And, I'm sure there are a lot of people with the same passion. So I think that'll be really fun.
Well, good luck to you.
I know you got
thank
plenty
you.
of good sports to follow down there at Methodist. So,
Oh, yeah.
seeing what happens with you down there.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Well, guys, Commissioner Tucker, James, we appreciate the time to come and talk with us. I know every day is a new challenge with a lot of unexpected questions, so we definitely appreciate the time. We'd love to talk to you soon sometime. Well, guys, you are watching the Sports Block. We'll be right back.
Once again, I'd like to thank our guests from the North Carolina High School Athletic Association. It was great talking to you and great having you guys on. I'm going to throw it over to Harrison for the next interview.
Hello, my name is Harrison Eaton. We are here with Nick Stevens from Capital Broadcasting and High School OT. How are you doing, Nick?
Doing well. Just trying to get used to our new normal of how we're doing business right now.
Yeah, it's definitely a difficult situation that none of us thought we would be in. But I'd first like to ask you, of course, with the pandemic, your job has changed. You haven't been able to report on high school sports and, pretty much do your job essentially like you would on a normal basis. But I'd like to ask you, how has this changed your job and how have you adapted to it?
Well, I think in our line of work, we have to be flexible and nimble and be able to adjust to whatever's thrown at us. And my team's done a really good job doing that so far. We're not covering games, like you said, like normal, which is obviously a big part of what we typically do. But there's other aspects of things that we do still have to cover. Obviously, the pandemic is having a huge impact on high school sports, and that's a big story we're spending a lot of time on and trying to cover in from as many different angles as we can. From whether it's the athlete's perspective or the coaches or administrators or, the NCHSAA has had a lot of news lately. And there's other things going on, like recruiting news is still happening. We're still very busy with that. And it's also kind of an opportunity. I mean, it's not a situation we'd like to be in by any means, but it's an opportunity for us to try some new things that we might otherwise not have time to try, to do some more long-term projects or some long-form reporting that we don't always have time to do. So, we're trying to approach it that way, that it's an opportunity for us to find new ways to do things, better ways to do things, and not just, a problem because we don't have games to cover.
Yeah, it was a great answer. Like with us, we'd be covering games at Middle Creek, and now we're doing a sports block at home and get to have guests like you, which is, we all got to adapt to it. But going off what you said with the North Carolina High School Athletic Association, there's some stuff that's happened on the field, obviously, with scheduling and stuff. We don't see what's going to happen in the future, and obviously what happened in the past is the schedule has been canceled and spring sports have been canceled. But have you heard anything behind the scenes, that the typical fan wouldn't see at the organizational level at the North Carolina High School Athletic Association?
Well, to be honest, there's really they're kind of in the same boat we are. They're kind of waiting and seeing. I guess I don't want to say it's a good thing that when this happened. It's not a good thing when this happened, and obviously especially for the class of 2020 who are playing spring sports, it's a terrible timing. But just from the NCHSA's perspective, going into the summertime now where things are down usually anyway, I think that's going to buy them a little bit of time before they have to make any sort of decision for fall sports. And as you look towards fall, and obviously football is played in the fall, and high schools depend on the money that they make from the gate at football games in order to fund all these other sports that happen throughout the year. So, it's a serious situation that they're dealing with. As far as, like behind the scenes and stuff, a lot of the decision making so far has really been taken out of their hands because, obviously the governor has closed school through the rest of the school year, which is not really the NCHSA's decision. That kind of made the decision for them. And I don't think that they're going to have many decisions to make on their own this summer. I think that a lot of that's going to be made by the state government, by people like the state health director who we interviewed on High School OT this week. And once we get to the fall, if we get through these phases that the governor has laid out and we're into phase 3 or whatever comes after phase 3, maybe the NCHSA will have some decisions to make. But I think we're probably 2 months away from any sort of major decision from the NCHSA. I don't think it's going to come until sometime in July.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And there's, football getting into workouts, middle of June, and then extending their tryouts into, July. It's all going to be affected. But what do you anticipate the fall season looking like? Whether it's the fan aspect, the practices, or schedules in general. If you had to make a prediction yourself.
Whew. Well, there's so many different things that can happen in the fall that honestly I hesitate to even make a guess because I'm not obviously I'm not even smart enough to be a medical person, so I have no idea what the pandemic side of it is going to look like. Just from an athletic standpoint, I think that there's a possibility that we're going to see things look a lot different. We did a roundtable discussion with some athletic directors from across the state a few weeks ago, and all of them agreed that if fans can't attend games, we can't have high school sports because that's how we pay for them. And so that's going to be an interesting thing there. There's been some discussion, and this is nothing official, but there's been some discussion about maybe we limit the capacity of stadiums to 50% or something like that. Maybe we require fans to wear masks. When we talked to the state health director this week, she was talking about how athletes are going to have to take extra precautions and athletic trainers are going to have more duties to help keep them safe. We're not going to have shared water bottles. We're probably not going to be doing handshake lines. There's going to be a lot of differences in athletics. And, as far as what gets played, if anything gets played, I honestly don't have a clue how that's going to play out.
Yeah, definitely. Just like, professional sports, they don't know. They're trying to adapt to, different schedules and different opportunities that they may be able to do, like hockey and NBA playing at neutral site with different teams located there. But obviously that's not an option for high school sports. But you mentioned, they can't have high school sports without fans. That's their driving revenue and, $7 a ticket a game. Have you heard any financial impact at, smaller schools about, maybe they aren't able to fund their athletic programs? Just have you heard anything about that?
Well, and a lot of schools, and obviously, when you have a smaller base, there's less people to pull money from. But yeah, I've heard from several schools from 1A to 4A who are already have concerns. A lot of booster clubs are selling sponsorships. and those sponsorships go to small businesses that are really, really hurting right now. So those sponsorships are probably going to dry up for a lot of people. There's one of the ADs that we talked to from the Triad area in that roundtable. He told us he's lost, I think it was like $40,000 in already from fundraisers that they weren't able to do this spring. In the summertime, a lot of schools are doing summer camps as fundraisers for like younger kids. Those probably aren't going to be able to happen. So how does that impact things? And like I said, they're all already looking to football season because every single high school that plays football in North Carolina is pretty much in the same boat there, that most of their budget is made from football season. So, for a lot of schools, football is the only sport that actually brings in revenue. That most of the other sports, you're lucky if you break even. So yeah, there's already some financial impacts. I don't think we know yet how deep that they will actually cut. I think that's going to be an ongoing story, not just this fall, but I think that's going to be something that we're covering at High School OT for probably a few years. And I think you're going to see the NCHSAA have to make some changes like they did back in 2008, 2009, to how they do things to help schools save money, whether that's limiting travel, changing the way we do the playoffs to keep people closer by in the early rounds. Those are things that they did back when we had the Great Recession. And they're probably going to have to do some of those same types of things now.
Yeah, and the financial impact, like you said, and most schools they thrive on football. I know Middle Creek is fortunate; they have good attendance throughout with basketball and lacrosse, and throughout all sports pretty much. But some of those smaller schools and even schools at the 4A level this pandemic's definitely going to affect them in the long run.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'd like to get into my next question. And so when the news came out the week of the 13th, which was the last week that high schools were in school, the High School OT gave out the alert that the North Carolina High School Athletic Association was going to delay practice and any team organization till April 6th, I believe. What was your initial reaction from that, and then your reaction from the point where they extended it to about mid-May?
Well, that week was crazy. We were getting ready for the basketball state championships when all this happened. On Tuesday of that week, they had the basketball state championship press conference. So we were there for that. Our whole team was there with the basketball coaches from all over the state. The whole NCHSAA staff was there. And everybody, I don't want to say they were joking about it. That's not really the right words, but everybody's just kind of like, hey, don't shake my hand. We'll bump elbows.
Yeah.
But nobody in that room, I don't think, thought we were going to not play the basketball state championships. And then the next day was the day that like the professional sports and college sports started falling. And that night I actually texted Kyle Morton, who works for me. He was supposed to be manning the ship that day on Thursday, and I had some doctor's appointments I had to go to. And I texted him and I said, I'm canceling my doctor's appointments because tomorrow's gonna be crazy. And I mean, I don't think I left my desk seat for probably 8 or 9 hours that day. It was constant stuff coming in. As far as my reaction, by Thursday morning, I pretty much knew what was about to happen. I wasn't surprised by that because of what was going on with the college and professional sports and other high school associations in other states. But it was, disappointing. And also when it was over, I was just kind of like, what just happened? Like, we've seen situations like when hurricanes hit, right? Or snowstorms, like we know we're going to be out of school and have no sports for a little while. But in a snowstorm, eventually it's going to melt. And in a hurricane, that eventually the power's going to come back on and the floodwaters are going to go down and we're going to get back to normal. But this is kind of like, we have no idea how long this is going to last. And I remember talking to ADs then, and they were like, oh, in 2-3 weeks, we'll be back to normal. Everything will be fine. And here we are now worried about, are we even going to play in 2 or 3 months in the fall?
Yeah, and you also mentioned that you haven't been able to, you didn't leave your desk that week, and that obviously this whole thing, like I said it before, has affected your job. But you run high
Hmm.
school OT live and roundtable. I saw you guys doing virtual, but how have you guys adapted to that, as well as what it looks like in the future for future high school OT lives and Football Friday?
Well, obviously, what we do in football season is going to largely depend on what happens with football. We have all intentions of continuing doing what we do at high school OT, and obviously that means we're going to have to adapt and adjust. And like I said, the day that all this happened, I had a meeting with my team, and we talked about we've got to be adaptable and nimble and willing to change how we do things quickly. Within 24 hours of sports being suspended, we had launched an entire new sub brand of High School OT Benched, which is still ongoing, and it's all of our coverage of the whole coronavirus and its impact on high school sports. And we couple within an hour or two of school being closed, we launched High School OT Helps, and our audience donated, I think it was like $12,000 to the food bank of Central and Eastern North Carolina to help kids who depend on school for meals, make sure they're fed during this pandemic. So, those were examples of things that we did quickly, that we were able to get off the ground. And we are changing the way we do things. Roundtable, we're no longer, our studio that we use is actually sealed right now. It's an emergency backup studio at WRAL in case the main studio gets infected with coronavirus. They can send healthy people into that studio to do the news. So and we've had adjustments in our building, like we're obviously working remotely right now, and if you go there, you have to get your temperature taken before you go in, and you can't have meetings with people. You have to do everything virtually, like we're doing right now. But like I said, I think we're trying to approach this as an opportunity. And again, we wouldn't have chosen this. There's not like any of us would, but we had never done Zoom interviews before on High School OT before this happened. And now that's kind of like acceptable to our audience that, hey, if I recorded a Zoom interview yesterday with two athletic directors out on the Outer Banks. Whereas in the past, I would have had to have driven to the Outer Banks. I mean,
Yep.
that would have been a 2-day event, and this took me 45 minutes. So it's going to open the door, I think, when we get to the other side of this, to have new ways of getting content, better content, more timely content. We'll be able to do it more cost effective on our side, which is important. But I think it's also an opportunity for us to really show that we do more than just cover games. We call ourselves sports journalists. We believe that that's what we are. And so we are doing things that, we typically wouldn't be doing, covering sports, like, interviewing state officials like the health director. I mean, that's not really a high school sports thing, but, it impacts high school sports right now. And, we've done other things with mental health professionals about how to approach this as high school students and high school athletes. And, trying to ask some of the questions, the tough questions that need to be asked of NCHSAA leadership about the finances and everything. And so, there's a lot of things that we have to do, that we have been doing, and a lot of opportunity in this. And I think that the people that come out of this, I think there's going to be two groups of people that come out of this, and one of them is going to be groups of people that really succeed and take the next step because they have found opportunity in what we're doing, and we're trying to be one of those people.
Yeah, you guys have, as you've done throughout the entire history of, covering high school sports, you guys have done a fantastic job of, interviews and articles and, roundtable and all that, all the functions.
Mm-hmm.
It's truly amazing. And you guys have continued that through, what is a rough time for everybody. But I'd like to hit back at something you mentioned that earlier in the show, where you mentioned the recruiting aspect. I've already seen some kids, transfer to prep schools and reclassify, but can you see some more reclassifications? And no matter the season of sport, basketball season, football season, baseball season,
Mm-hmm.
with all this happening, like a higher chance or of this happening? And can you see this AAU circuit? It's not hasn't been announced yet if it will be canceled, but if it is, that could also play a huge effect on the winter sports season. What do you see this more? Do you see this having a bigger effect than we anticipate on the recruiting aspect?
Well, I think it's going to have a big effect on every aspect. From a recruiting purpose, I think kids have to make their own decisions for what's best for them. So if they think that going somewhere to a private school and reclassifying is what's best for them, and their family thinks that, then that's their decision to make. As far as the NCHSA goes, their bylaws have an 8-semester rule. So once you start as a freshman, start high school, you have 8 semesters to play high school sports. And I would have to look this up, but I believe that's a bylaw, which means it can't be changed without a 3/4 vote of the membership in the spring. So I don't see that really changing. I don't think they're going to add extra eligibility to students who have missed seasons. I think if kids want that, they're going to have to go to a school that allows them to reclassify. You mentioned AAU. That's going to be a really big impact. We talk a lot about the class of 2020. That's more of a class of 2021 thing, because those basketball players that are juniors, going to be seniors next year, this is the most important spring and summer of their recruiting process. They've missed the April live period. Obviously, there's one coming up in July. I was reading something earlier this morning. It sounds like the NCAA is going to extend that recruiting dead period through the month of June. So July not totally off the table yet, but I'm not sure how likely that is to happen. They've already missed that. There's a June recruiting period where they're able to be with their high school teams as well, that it appears will be missed now. But one thing that I think is going to be really interesting is how does this evolve with the college coaches? Are they going to be more dependent on high schools now? Because for so long it's been the recruiting has happened in AAU, and high school has kind of taken a back seat in the recruiting world. That might change, and we've already seen that start to shift a little bit in the last few years. That might change even more because of this. So that's something that I think bears watching. I don't know the answer to that yet.
What teams in the area do you think were most affected by the cancellation of spring sports? In other words, whose year was it? Do you think this year it was to make a run at the state title, no matter the sport?
You're trying to get me in trouble. So I learned a long time ago that I'm really bad at predicting things. I honestly don't know who I would say were the favorites in all those different sports. The biggest, to me, the most unfortunate part of that is for the 2020 seniors. Especially because when you look at high school sports, most of the kids who play high school sports, all of them, not any in particular, but this is the last time they're going to play competitive sports, because when they end their high school careers, they're going on to either college or the workforce or the military, and most of them are not playing sports again at a competitive level. No more competitive than intramurals or pickup or something like that, right? So that's to me, that's the most unfortunate part, because it happened. It was something that was out of their control. They had no impact on, and there was really no warning that it was coming, right? So
Yep.
I think that's the most unfortunate part of this. I like I said earlier, I try to find the positive, the optimistic part in all of these things, the opportunities. I hope that what it does is that it kind of shows the underclassmen, don't take seasons or games for granted. Like you have no idea what's going to happen that could impact your season or injure your entire career, whether that's an injury or, we've seen seasons ended in Eastern North Carolina the last few years because of the hurricanes we've had, Matthew and Florence. Whether it's a second wave of this pandemic that might come at some point, don't take that for granted. And I hope that what that will do is that it'll show 2021 and 2022 and 2023, to really buckle down and take advantage of the opportunities they have in front of them.
Yeah, that's a great answer. So now going into more away from the pandemic, one question I've had that I know somebody back there wants to know is, what is your favorite memory covering Middle Creek athletics?
Oh gosh. Oh, that's a hard one. Probably my first real big memory of covering Middle Creek athletics would be probably I can't remember, I think it was the third round of the basketball playoffs. I don't even remember what year this was. Probably 2008. It was a long time ago. New Hanover was like the big team in the state. Everybody thought they were going to be it, and they came up and played at Middle Creek, and the crowd was amazing. If it wasn't sold out, it was close, and the student section was all the way up to the back wall, I think, and that was really a cool event. I also remember some of the football playoff runs that Middle Creek's made. The year that they played several of their a couple of their playoff games at Campbell was kind of cool. I can't even remember what year that was either. I think that was back when Garrett Latham was playing. I think it was back then. There's been a lot of really cool moments with Middle Creek. The baseball state championship run was another one that I remember really well. It's so I've been doing this so long and covered so much, it's hard to pick one moment. People ask me all the time about my favorite person I've interviewed. That's hard to do too, because what I love so much about what I do is that we get to interact with so many different people in so many different areas. And before we started recording, you were asking me about the picture Todd Gurley I have over my shoulder. That was the first story I ever did on television, was with Todd Gurley, who went on to be the NFL Offensive Player of the Year one year. So guys like him and John Wall and Brandon Ingram and Naheem Hines, who Middle Creek used to really love when he was at Garner. There were lots of really cool people that I've had the opportunity to interview, and and even some of the people that don't go on to be big time professional athletes that go on to do some other really cool things. There's a lot of people who are succeeding in things not sports related once played high school sports. And that's why high school sports are so important, because you learn so many great things. Even the state health director that I interviewed this week, she's a former high school athlete and was a record setting sprinter in college. So, that's what I love the most about high school sports. And, I could go down the list of people I've interviewed from Middle Creek that were really good. So, gosh, I don't think I could pick one moment though that I remember most. that's
Yeah,
hard.
definitely. It's with that job that you have and many others, that there's so many experience you get and people you get to meet. It's something I want to pursue, to be a sports broadcaster in the future, and seeing all the benefits and cool things that get to happen are really some of the best parts of the job, if not up towards the top. My next
Nick,
question
how is that Australia last second shot not on the list, man? That's got to be on the
Oh
list.
my goodness, I forgot about the Australia last second shot.
That's got to be on the list, man.
That was something. I completely forgot about that one. That we actually aired that on the news that night. I brought it back to Jeff Gravely, and I didn't even have a TV camera with me. I had some little dinky handheld thing that I just shot the last play of, and he brought it back. He's like, we'll air it, but not very well shot. So that was a heck of a moment too. That was a great shot.
It was a fun time, man. It was a fun time. Yeah. I was telling Harrison, I remember you interviewing me when that was over, and I kind of set up the whole situation. And, like you mentioned, so many great things have happened in Middle Creek High School athletics.
Mm-hmm.
But, that was the first time that I remember kind of that Australian club team kind of coming through the Triangle area. And when we got a chance to play in both our women's program and men's basketball program, and then for it to end that way, which was a pretty cool memory for all of us.
Yeah, I had completely forgotten about that. Now they're here all the time. They play lots of people every year now, I
They
feel
do.
like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my next question is kind of more of a, I don't know if you know the answer to it, but Middle Creek has been dropped to the 4A single A level in the past couple of years due to school size and the amount of kids we
Hmm.
have. And new schools being developed like Green Level, South Garner, Willow Springs in a couple of years, and Friendship in more later parts. But do you see any negative or positive impacts from these schools, taking kids away, and that might lower the level of, quality of play or athletes going to a certain school, and it might equal out? But what's your thoughts on that?
Well, that's an issue that's really unique to Wake County and other large areas. It's interesting because, well, to answer your question, it does have impacts. One impact, if I guess this would be a negative impact, is that it spreads the talent pool out more, right? And people used to, including myself, used to point to that as why Wake County for so long was struggling to compete in football. Obviously, Wake Forest has kind of eliminated that stereotype. They've had quite a bit of success, but I guess the positive is the reason we have that many schools is because we have that many people, right? So while it's going to distribute the talent away and kind of dilute it a little bit, there's probably more talent there than there is in other areas. And in some areas of the state, you have, their populations are falling. You're going to see my dog here in a second. The populations are falling, and so they're actually consolidating their schools. So they're actually losing schools and having fewer of them. Around here, probably the closest would be Vance County. A couple years ago, they used to be Northern Vance and Southern Vance, and now they're just Vance County. So in some of our areas that we cover, they have the opposite problem, which isn't necessarily translating to more success on the field or on the court. That's a really long answer to say, yeah, there's probably some negatives there, but I think it's better than the alternative, which would be having a population that's falling. I mean, we're really growing quickly here in the Triangle and have been for some time.
Yeah, I've definitely seen the effects of it. Middle Creek's been affected. I'm with the football team about 9 months out of the year, and it's not necessarily our fault, but we play teams that are we don't play teams that are in our conference. Fuquay and Holly Springs and Friendship are all in the 4AA level, and to play them in the playoffs is kind of exciting. But
Mm-hmm.
past couple of years we've been knocked out by Pine Forest, and we didn't make it last year. But you know, it's kind of more, I guess, exciting to play opponents that you're normally used to, and
Yeah. So the 4A and 4AA stuff is specific to football, right? Because what we
Mhm.
do in football is we have, for now anyway, this might change when we do realignment next year. There's 4 classifications. So we have 1A, 2A, 3A, 4A. And then when we get to football, they split them all in half and have 8 because there's so, like in 4A, there's like over 1,000 student difference in the largest 4A school and the smallest 4A school. So that's a big difference. So that's why we subdivide those. But it's also all dependent on who gets into the playoffs. So they're going to take, in football, they're going to take the 48 qualifying 4A teams in football and put them into the field, and then they're going to break them in half based on their school size. So I don't have the ADM numbers in front of me, but it's possible that Middle Creek may be one of those border teams. So
Yep.
depending on who else gets in, Middle Creek might get pushed up to 4AA. Or if more schools get in that are bigger than Middle Creek, they might go down to 4A. There's always some teams that are right there on that bubble. And then we do the same thing with the East and the West. So that's I'd have to do some research on that, but that's kind of how we get that 4A and 4AA and on down the list. That could change come realignment when we do that this year, but that's how Middle Creek ends up there right now.
So do you think there's any factors that go into some schools being more dominant in all-around sports and others that aren't as strong in others?
There's definitely factors that go into it. J. Mike Blake, who works with us now, used to be the high school editor for the News and Observer. He did a research project several years ago when he when he was still with the NNO, looking at this, and what he found is that a lot of it has to do with the economic situation at individual schools. So schools who have lower free and reduced lunch populations are oftentimes winning more. And you can see that. You mentioned Green Hope. That's obviously one of them. I actually went to Green Hope, so I'm very familiar with Green Hope. Great athletic success there for a sustained period of time for, over a decade. And so, that's obviously part of it. You can look at other schools that have similar economic makeups of Green Hope around the state. Weddington is one of them down near Charlotte. That's another one. Cardinal Gibbons has that advantage as a school that has a different economic makeup. And part of that is they have those students who have more resources. They're going to be able to afford more professional training, better equipment that they have at home. They've probably played club sports longer than kids who can't afford them. I think that's a big part of it. Also, Green Hope, they have a lot of people there. Let's say soccer, for example, right? They've grown up playing club soccer. They grow up in golf course communities, so they're probably going to be good at golf. So there are advantages like that as well. So there's probably some other factors out there that go into it. There's going to be regions that have really strong club volleyball. There's going to be, for the longest time, the Charlotte dominated 4A football, right? Wake Forest is the one that really changed that. Last year, the West won all 8 football state championships. The East didn't win a single one of them. So, I don't know what that factor is. If I did, I think I'd have a lot of football coaches that want to talk to me. I think the biggest factor is definitely the economic one, because schools that have more resources are going to have more ability to improve.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Me and myself including were looking for that kind of answer, and why I go into a Middle Creek Green Hope basketball game this year at Green Hope, and I go in and the gym's almost intimidating just seeing all those banners posted on the wall. But thank you for your time today, Nick. With the pandemic and fitting time in for us to adapt to this new sports block that we've never done before, and thank you for joining us today.
Absolutely, anytime. Appreciate having me. Love what you guys do. I think it's awesome. When I was in high school, we had newspaper class, and now I don't really use much of what I learned in newspaper class because everything's different now. So love what y'all are doing. It's awesome.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you guys for watching this segment, and we'll be right back with the Sports Blog.
Welcome back to the Sports Block, guys. I think we've had an outstanding show this evening. with our guests from the North Carolina High School Athletic Association and from high school OT. A great way to kind of get together once again, and even though we can't see sports, but just talk about all those things that we're missing, and we hope come back really, really soon.
Yeah, I miss sports. It's been too long, man.
Yeah.
It's only so many times you can relive some of the great ball games that have been on. As much as I enjoy watching those, it's nothing like setting that new moments in history that are defined by every play. And it's tough not being able to see it right now. And I just hope that this thing goes away and we can get back to some normalcy with everything in our lifestyles here real soon.
Yeah, it's really different watching a game and you already know the result. I mean, you already know how it's going to finish. I mean, just on the edge of our seat, but you already know what's happening. I can't wait to get everything back, get everything in the swing of it.
Well, I'll leave us with one suggestion. If you are desperate for sports, there are some great pro disc golfing channels on YouTube with a lot of good tournament championship coverage and everything. So if you don't want to know the outcome and you want to watch some sports, pro disc golf.
Hey.
It would definitely be brand new to me, I can tell you that, because I have not ever watched 1 second of pro disc golf. So that would be brand new.
Look, and if you say no to it, you obviously aren't missing sports that bad.
I'm in. Next time we do one of these, I'm going to give you an update on who the #1 team is and who I'm rooting for.
Wrong. Nope, wrong. There's no teams.
I tried, bro.
Hey, he's getting there. We'll get there.
Well, guys, thanks again for joining us for another episode of a Sports Block at the House. It's going so good. I say we keep the train rolling. Let's do it again.
Yeah.
So far, so good. Let's do it.
All right, guys. Thank you guys for joining us again. For Bryce Herring, Ryan Grover, our producer, Louis Maldonado, I'm Coach Wes Petty. Thanks again to all of our guests. We'll see you next time. You're watching The Sports Block.